All right, second hour of the Elias Macko Show. Now, all week long on this program, we are looking at the past and future of Olympic Stadium. Simply put, we're putting the Big O on trial. Have a listen to this text message I just received from a listener. Listener writes, Elias, at first, I thought we should keep the Big O. But the more I listen to you talk about it, you are starting to convince me we should demolish it. There is really no good reason Montreal should keep the Big O. So, listen, we're putting the Big O on trial, like I said. This is a stadium that was built for the 1976 Olympics. It was not finished in time. The Expos moved in 1977. They played in an open-air stadium until 1987 when the Big O's supposedly retractable roof was installed. It was retracted for the first time a couple of years later in 1989, immediately had issues. The Kevlar fabric roof ended up being prone to tearing. Within years, it stopped functioning. It was replaced. The new roof had more issues. The Expos left in 2004. The Alouettes said no thanks to that building as well. It is a rare occasion today that the playing surface at the Big O is used for a major sporting event. And now the latest in the saga, the Quebec government, which has spent decades trying to figure out what to do with the stadium. Last week, they announced there's no longer a public call for offers on the roof replacement. They're going with two firms to look at how to replace the roof and the technical ring, one of the key structural elements that support the building. Today on Big O Week, we welcome William Jegher. He's a partner at EY, and he has been one of the people working behind the scenes in the past little while on the recent attempts to bring back baseball to the city. William joins us on the line. Hi, William.
Hey, how's it going, Elias?
I'm doing good. This week, I've brought up dollar signs and how much it would cost and how much it's cost and that kind of thing. Can we just start off on this? From your perspective, what is the true damage that the Big O has brought to this city? And maybe not dollars, maybe in other metrics. What has been the damage that the Big O has reaped in this city?
Oh my goodness, where to begin? So first of all, on the dollars front, I was actually just telling somebody yesterday, I can't prove it, but I'm pretty sure that the Big O is the most expensive stadium ever built in the history of mankind. Mm-hmm. I think that when you start throwing in all of the maintenance costs and the roof repairs over the years and, sort of actualizing it for $20-23, I mean, SoFi Stadium in LA, which is actually hosting the first of 6 Taylor Swift concerts tonight, I think it was built for a total cost of about $3.5 billion. There's no question that we've spent more than $5 billion on the Big O to date. And what do we get for it? So I think it's actually caused damage to Montreal's reputation on the international scene. I think that it has resulted in several major concert acts and shows skipping over Montreal because we don't have a suitable venue. Now, keep in mind, these large touring acts, when they tour, they're not arenas all the time. So they have stadium tours, right? So they're going to go to a stadium. They'll go to the Rogers Centre in Toronto. They'll go to BC Place in Vancouver, but they will not come here. And that has nothing to do with the roof necessarily. It has to do with outdated acoustics. It has to do with just an outdated facility. So even if you replace the roof and the technical ring, you're actually still just putting a drop in the bucket in terms of what infrastructure what work this building actually needs to get it modernized.
So are you saying the Big O, it's not salvageable? Put in $2 billion, let's say. The issues with the stadium simply can't be fixed?
Well, what's the point of doing that? I mean, if you're putting in $2 billion, why not just build a new stadium, right? Mm-hmm. It's why not have something state of the art that the community can be proud of? And keep in mind, let's also make sure we're making the proper distinction. When we talk Olympic Stadium, we're just talking the bowl. Now, I understand the iconic nature of the tower. I understand, it is something that a lot of people take pride in. I'm not suggesting you necessarily take down the tower. I'm not suggesting you touch the Biodome or the Olympic swimming pools. I'm just talking about the bowl itself, so the stadium, which really has no use if you think about it. As you mentioned at the outset, it's got this new playing surface. Who's going to use it? The World Cup in 2026 isn't coming here. We have no baseball team. The CFL is at Molson Stadium. Who is actually going to use this facility and for what is the purpose of it? So it is, I believe, time for us to have a rethink on the asset as a whole. What are we doing? How are we doing it? How can it act as an economic engine to the east end of Montreal, which desperately needs an economic engine? But I don't think that the status quo is sustainable.
I just want to break some news for you, William, because it's very apropos to what you just mentioned on the concert front. We have breaking news. So Taylor Swift is going to come to Canada, and it'll be at the Rogers Centre, by the way, a facility that is also pretty old, but has been kept up to date.
All right, something tells me I'm going to have to be buying tickets for my daughter to go to Toronto. Boy,
yeah.
Okay.
So there you go. There you have a facility there that the Rogers Centre is a pretty interesting juxtaposition with the Big O here. Why do you think, William, that the Olympic Stadium has been like a little bit Teflon? Like, there's so many other things where governments would have said, no, okay, that's enough. We need to cut our losses and get rid of this thing. And we've seen governments around the world do it faced with similar situations. Why has the Olympic Stadium somehow managed to stave off that type of fate?
I think because some people in town and in the province see it as some kind of a heritage asset. They see it as a monument to the 76 Olympics. They see it as sort of being the postcard or, this iconic structure that defines Montreal. I don't understand. I cannot relate to those people. I don't understand why you would think that the bowl specifically, and again, I'm not talking about the tower, is any sort of iconic structure. There is no Olympic era infrastructure in most cities that lasts. So most cities that host the Olympics, it's a one and done. The assets get repurposed and reused because really you don't need a velodrome in a city and you don't need some of these assets. There's just no use for them, unfortunately. Which is a whole other story around, why does the city want to host the Olympics? But we won't get into that today. So I do believe that it is a bit of a political football. I think that, the average political term is 4 years. This discussion around the future of this asset, you're talking a multi-year discussion. This is probably like a 15 or 20-year project if you actually did want to embark on doing something. And given that the average, political shelf life is not even close to that long, the average politician is not going to take it on. It's really easy, no pun intended, to punt the ball down the field. Hey, I'll let the next guy worry about it.
All right, we're continuing our conversation with William Jegher. He's a partner at EY and has been a big part of the recent attempts to bring baseball back, Major League Baseball back to Montreal, as we continue our Big O week and examine the Olympic Stadium and what to do with it. William, next point of conversation here. Demolishing the stadium. What I hear from people that want to keep the structure, it's too expensive, Elias. You can't demolish it. We have a study from 1862 that says it'll cost $700 million. What do you say to that? It has now become too big to fail, and it's going to cost too much to get rid of.
Yeah, it's a great question, and interestingly enough, I remembered that study as well, and it was a great expose written in the Gazette. I think it was in 2013 or 2014 by Alison Lampert, where she actually interviewed the engineer who did that famous study where he estimated a demo cost. I think it was $700 million at the time. And Alison Lampert asked the engineer about this estimate. And he said to her, and I remember the exact quote, he said, well, this was a feasibility study. And because it was a feasibility study, the margin of error is anywhere between 0 and 100%.
0 and 100, okay.
0 and 100. So effectively meaning the estimate isn't worth because we actually have no idea how much it would cost. And we all know that the estimate as well did not take into account any salvage opportunity of recycling the materials at the Big O, because apparently, and I've spoken to a couple of construction companies, the concrete at the Big O is actually quite valuable. And so if you dismantled it, it actually would be better to dismantle it and not implode it because the concrete actually has a resale value. And interestingly enough, I mentioned this on the Mitch Melnick show the other day. The irony of all this is that pressed concrete in Olympic Stadium is the exact same pressed concrete needed to fill potholes. So, the jokes write themselves.
Kill two birds with one stone on that.
Exactly.
So, William, let me read you something here, right? And I'm happy that we're talking about this aspect of things. In a previous life, I had reached out to Controlled Demolition Inc. This is the company that holds multiple world records for demolitions, including Seattle's Kingdome, another massive concrete stadium that is no longer with us, as that city, Seattle, deemed it wasn't a proper facility anymore. So Marc Loiseau, he's now since retired, but he's got all these world records for demolitions. At the time, and this is in 2017 that he told me this, and he wrote me this because I reached out to him. He says, Elias, I took a look at the file we already had on the Olympic Stadium and correspondence going back to the year 2000 regarding the then believed price tag of $100 million for demolition. You tell me now, 17 years later, so it was in 2017, that the price has gone to $700 million. I expressed an opinion in March 2000 that the $100 million price tag seemed high under then current costs in Canada, which we are very familiar with. Working in the different provinces. I am of the opinion today that $700 million for demolition still seems very high, regardless of the constraints imposed by the subway, tunnels, or any thought about retaining the tower or adjacent facilities if the stadium itself is demolished. I cannot fathom any justification for those kinds of tax dollars being spent for what is a relatively straightforward demolition contract, no matter what the authority decides should remain at the site. Is the fix in, William? Is the fix in to just keep this sucker and make us pay for it?
Well. So interestingly enough, I also remember looking at the estimate to demolish Yankee Stadium, so the old Yankee Stadium, and you want to talk about a heritage structure, the house that Ruth built. Okay, this is the iconic stadium in baseball, which no longer exists, by the way. It was demolished for the cost of about $25 million. And by the way, there's train lines and all sorts of infrastructure issues in and around the old Yankee Stadium, and they still got it done for $25 million. Now, I'm not saying it would be easy to demolish the Big O, nor am I saying it would be a drop in the bucket in terms of cost. However, I do feel that the business case is there when you compare it to continued investment with a payback that is completely non-existent. Why on earth would you not just take it down, even if it does cost us a bit of money? At least then you're stopping the hemorrhaging. You're stopping us continuing to fund the structure that really gives us very little to no value.
So I would like to ask you how frustrated you are that there seem, even public perception-wise, people somehow are more okay with spending, let's say, an additional $1 billion or $2 billion to update the stadium to a state that won't even matter. But they would be opposed. Those same people would be opposed to, let's say, $100 million to a business person that wants to bring baseball back, or some money to the Saputos to renovate Saputo Stadium. What do you say to those people that are so against public money going into sports, but are seemingly okay with spending money on the Big O?
It honestly renders me speechless. I cannot, for the life of me, understand the logic that goes into that. And look, I'm actually somebody who is I'm not engaged. I'm not against public investment in sports and entertainment infrastructure and cultural infrastructure. We do it all the time in this city and in other cities in Canada and in the U.S. And because it has a community benefit and it brings something to a city. So it's fine to invest in something that has a payback. I just don't understand why people want to continue to invest in an asset that has no payback. In the event that you were able to bring Major League Baseball back to Montreal, you're actually bringing a completely new industry to the city. So forget for a second that it's sports. Pretend that you're just attracting a new company or a new industry, and you need to build them a plant or a factory. The government provides all sorts of funding mechanisms to do this to factories and to plants and to industries to bring economic activity to a city. And so if we wanted to bring a new industry, which is baseball, of course you should be able to get some sort of loan or assistance or something to that effect, because you are bringing an economic impact. You're bringing back something that the city does not have. In the case of Olympic Stadium, there is no economic impact. There is no impact generated from this asset. I just cannot understand, back to your question-wise, I have no explanation for it, and I do find it enormously frustrating.
You have had discussions throughout the last few years with lots of people in the attempts, right, to bring baseball, the Expos, back to Montreal. Have you ever had a discussion with government, like the CAQ government, let's say, about the Big O and why they spend money on it? Or do you just have like an opinion, a thought process on why it's government after government? It's PQ, it's Liberals, it's the CAQ. Why they continue to spend money on the structure?
So I have not had discussions about it. The project that we were working on at the time was focused on building something completely new because, as we've said over and over, and it was a condition for Major League Baseball from the outset, was you guys need to build a new stadium or a new ballpark. And so that was what we were completely focused on. In terms of why government after government continues to punt the ball down the field, I don't know, other than to say that it's probably just too difficult to tackle. It's too big of an issue. And look, in the grand scheme of things, I guess our province does have bigger fish to fry. I mean, we have all sorts of other issues that we need to focus on. I guess that when you put the Olympic Stadium on the list, I understand why it wouldn't make the top of the list. That being said, I don't understand continuing to plow money into something that has no payback. And so that's really the bottom line. Just figure out the story and figure out what you want to do with this asset. Somebody out there could figure it out. There's lots of creative people in this province. There's lots of people that have some good ideas. And I feel that you need to talk to those people, and we all got to put our heads together and figure something out here.
Knowing the situation with on the sports side of things and the Expos leaving and the attempts to bring them back, and looking back now we can be Monday morning quarterback, sports pun. What would have been the right year to break free from the Big O, to cut our losses? What do you think the year should have been that we cut our losses and said enough with spending money on this?
Well, look, I remember when I was in university when the old ownership group of the Expos was trying to get a stadium built. I think it was in the late 90s, and I think there was an ask for a government investment of $100 million on a $250 million ballpark cost, which would have been right below the Bell Center. I think that was a huge missed opportunity. And I think had that infrastructure gotten built, I think it would have gone on to serve all sorts of other usages for this city. And I think it would have shown increasingly that we really don't need that asset. And again, there's all sorts of ways to pay homage to the 76 Olympics. You can build a museum. You can build some sort of landmark there. You still have the tower. That is your homage to the 76 Olympics. I don't see the concrete bowl as an homage to anything other than missed opportunity and a failure. Frankly,
it is now an homage to waste.
Yep.
William, great chat. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thanks a lot for having me. Appreciate it.
William Jegher is a partner at EY.